I'll be calling you a radical. Another one's gone. Another one's gone. Another one bites the dust. All of Ogden's iconic structures are being tore down. This is such an iconic structure. The old Farmers Co-op granary, which my family was involved in this co-op. It wasn't like, you know, a nonprofit is now. It was a real nonprofit. So I'll tell you how iconic this building is in Ogden. Well, my grandson, just a little teeny guy. Hey, his mother says, little Kev wants to ask you something. I says, what's that? He says, Grandpa, what is that? What is that building, that big one? The first thing visually, when he first learned to talk. I says, that's a farmer's co-op, grain co-op. Do you know what a co-op is? And I told him, you know, my family, I grew up out west. I used to ride in the back of the grain truck in here. You know, and this is when co-ops were real co-ops. You know, the farmers all got together and, you know, it was nonprofit, a real nonprofit. But they tear down everything. That's their answer. Ask West Weber Elementary. You know, ask Caldwell's Cathedral on 25th Street. Ask anything. You know, this is their answer. Tear it down and throw it in the dump. You know, there's so much creativity that could have been used to make these, but no, real estate's not safe here in the mighty Wasatch. This building is iconic as it gets. What are those there? And so there's a rail yard that goes right there. People always ask me what those are. It's a gas company that loads on the thing. I'm not sure exactly, is it helium or what type of gas that is stored in those tanks, but here. This is the way you used to have to come into Ogden. And you go through the beautiful stockyards. Now the old stockyard, I shot lots of photographs, whatever. I have them in Weber State's audit. I worked to try to save that, and they just let it save it. It burnt down, the Leslie Hodson masterpiece. The Exchange building, which I've done dozens of videos of there, how the hell can they not? That Exchange building is grand. I got some really great stories about the pig, the cow, the sheep, and the horse up at the top. You know, I'll tell those one day. But these iconic structures all up and down Ogden are all coming down. It's starting to look like, have you ever been in East Germany? You know, after the war, when they took down everything was leveled. You know, Vienna is so grand. That's why, there's a few iconic buildings left in West Germany, but they leveled everything. So in reconstruction, they built these big square boxy apartments. I mean, it really takes you back. That's what Ogden's starting to look like. The great artisan city that it was. No more. That's their answer. Ask the West Weber Elementary. The Leslie Hodson, Frank Lloyd Wright fucking masterpiece, they threw in the dump. That's what they do here. Tear it down, throw it in the dump. You know, it's iconic structure. You know, it's such a metaphor because the co-ops, you know, the Italian Austrian farmers on that side of the Great Causeway that goes over the lake. On the south side, the Northern European immigrants on the other side in West Weber. On the north side, another one's gone. There's an old freaking Ogden cowboy. Maybe an old dirt farmer. So there ain't none of those left. You know, now they just drain off the marsh. They're corrupt. This is back when the Farm Bureau wasn't corrupt. And the Agriculture Department of Bear Monsanto. Another one's gone. Another one's gone. Another one bites the dust. So I always try to get footage as much as Ogden. Yeah, I always assume someone. Did you see they tore down the Piccadilly Chips? That grand building on Washington right by the river? Did you see they tore that down? So this is going to take them a while. It's like my grandpa, Abe Hunsaker IV. You know, he was the big guy then when they tore down the old Weber High on. That was so corrupt. They tore that Leslie Hodson masterpiece down on 12th and Washington. He warned everybody that was bidding it. It bankrupted 2 demolition contractors. He said the wrecking ball was bouncing off, which I saw that happen on the Promontory Territories at Weber State. These are built like fortresses. This is back in the era when they built shit, when Americans had pride and when Americans had craftsmen. I mean, I know I'm Kevin Blanch, Blanch Plastering. I wouldn't ever switch to the fake shit. You know, look at all these fake ones that they put up that Western did all over. All coming down. I tried to get as much footage. I got out of the plastic. Well, how'd I get out? Cancer took me out. I was given too much to live in 2011. You know, I got opened up twice. But I grew up with this right here. I'd ride back at the train track. It's iconic. So just like the old stockyards, talk about a beautiful Leslie Ogden important building. It's hard to find footage, just like you think you can find some footage or pictures of the old John Athlete Park. Good luck, that old growth forest. Throw it down, throw it. What the fuck? That's what they do in Ogden, this great artisan city. It's disappearing before our eyes. With these crackerbox fucking pieces of houses. It's outrageous. It's heartbreaking. They wanted to tear down Ogden High. I was part of that. They almost tore down Polk. I was part of that committee. The guy come up there at the ceremony and thanked me because when they restored it back in those early days, I'm the guy that put those gargoyles and the obelisk back together. He says, we can still see your handprints in it. There was one left. We took it down and made a mold of it. I says, did you leave my handprints in it? Yeah. You know, I did all the artisan. I did all the restoration here. The tree in the Children's Museum, that's my handprint. The Leslie Hodgson 1905 Masonic Temple. I saved that with my mind and my back. Randy Richards and Bernie Allen promised me they'd put a plaque. Did they? Did they? Just like they promised me on the tree. I did all that for free. I did the tree for free. Just out of respect for the community that I live in. But they, you know, it's not a two-way street here. I have respect for my town, my community, my architecture, Leslie Hodgson, my people, but they have no respect for me. First, they come for the art. They hate artisans here. You know, I would never switch to the fake shit. I mean, I got 10,000. You don't see them taking my molded up shit down. No, it stands the test of fucking time. I got beautiful skip crow walls all over. You know, they just keep tearing down Ogden. I had fucking 27 on Washington Boulevard alone. I think there's a few left, very few. The old Giles Furniture Building, that's there. Fuck, I did that in 1979. You know, my hand was all over, but anything artisan, first they come for the artisan, they tear down. There's so many things that could be done with these buildings. They can't get creative. They can't recycle material. Old crow timber, brick pavers. Why? Get a crew, freaking tear things in, but that's their answer here. American can. Next thing, the old Del Monte will go right down there. You know, the Exchange building, how is it still standing? How have they not restored the Leslie Hodgson? That building is so fucking grand. I mean, that building is incredible. I've tried to buy it. I said, they'll give you $1 for it, and then I'll restore it. That's all they got to do. Say, hey, here's the deal. $1, it's yours, under the contract that you restored to its historical original form. And you have X amount of days to do it. That's simple. Fuck, that could be the coolest restaurant in history. That could be the coolest building. It is the coolest building in Ogden. It's ready to fall fucking down because they've neglected it for fucking 40, 50 years. They let the Coliseum burn down. Yo, Del Monte will go next. You know, this iconic fucking city, this grand city, this grand architecture, and no one gives a fuck about it. Well, I do. You know, the Ashley 100 here, 200 years ago this year. America can't. Oh, that one's in disarray. That's the Da Vinci School now. At least it's been restored somewhat. Another one's gone. Another one's gone. Another one bites the dust. No disrespect for architecture. Disrespect for these fuckers wouldn't know a fucking Picasso was smashed. They found it at the fucking Savers. They'd throw it in the fucking dump. You know, they're out of their minds. Another one's gone. Another one's gone. It's iconic because these co-ops, like, I'll tell you the story about my grandpa, Abraham, Leonard Blanch. Cooper Irrigation president. Back when the Farm Bureau wasn't corrupt. They were so communal, the church welfare farms right out there. You know, I grew up hoeing. I grew up picking on those farms. You're required to do it for free. The co-ops, everybody worked that field, put it into the cannery. Mike Hancock burned down the old peery right there by my house. It was still there. I remember when it burnt down. You know, they were just kids, I think, smoking cigarettes. And I remember it was Blaine Hadley come to the house one day. I'm sitting there with my grandpa, and he says, hey, and my grandpa was a chain-smoking Lucky Strikes. Jim Beam drinking, never drank in the house, never smoked. My grandma, the God-fearing woman, Adelia admired. What a gem that woman was. Walking, talking encyclopedia. Moses Tracy's granddaughter. And comes to the door and he says, so-and-so can't pay the rent over there at the house. And he says, you mean won't pay the rent? Which is very common. You know, some of these people, and we're just gathering up some money to help them out. Oh, God, he says, my grandma walks over, gets his checkbook. So how much is the rent? This is $120 a month, I think. This is in the late 60s. He writes a check and hands him a check for $2,400. Blaine looks at him, he says, what's that for? And he says, that'll cover him for a couple of years. Is that good? Bye. That's how they work. They didn't give a shit about the circumstance. And you'd say, well, they're just scamming the system. You know, when Reagan came here down 17th Street, I lived on Grant. I remember they came to my house and I was pretty loaded. I was young, freaking, I was pretty wasted. And then the Secret Service interviewed me, want to know about guns. They went to the old, cannery down there. But everybody was welcome. That's how it was around here. And you say, well, what if somebody's just scamming this? So, who cares? We'll let God sort that out. They used to say. This is one of those. This is a true co-op. It was a true, not a nonprofit like they are today. It's sad, right? But that's what's happened to our incredible. I got to tell this story before I turn this off. I'll get a lot of footage of this as it goes, like I did the Swift building. That was so dirty and crap. Like the Safeway building. I remember he's like, I said, you're going to cover up $1 million rock job with $10,000 of plaster? He hired me, the Safeway on 24. By the way, that was Mr. Anselmi. He was co-op farmer. You all remember that was the grocery there. What a great guy. And he's like, I won't do it. I'm not going to cover up this multi-million dollar rock job, this granite, this big. I won't. I refuse. I refuse to do it. I won't. You know they tore that down and threw the rock in the dump? I mean, I can go on and on and on this fucking town. Because how can they understand art and history and culture and architecture? They have no fucking clue what I'm even talking about. These buildings were built like Fort Knox. When they tore down the old Weber High, my grandpa said it bankrupted too. Demolition contractors, wrecking ball. These guys knew how to build. I was trained by these guys. I'm in Europe, I'm in Austria all the time, and in Italy. By the way, Ashley's the fashion designer Italiano. My daughter grew up here. I'm there a lot. I remember being there, and everybody's giving me shit. There's some plasters up there. I'm having coffee with them every morning. Like, I know how to plaster. No, I'm not a cop. I know how to plaster. The guy got tired of hearing it. So finally, I said, get up here. So I got up there one morning. He gave me a blade about that one I used to have a famous kiss it. And he was trying to intimidate me with that big blade. You ain't going to intimidate me. I'm a beast. I was. So I had open heart surgery again the second time. But I'm getting back to my strength. And he said, get up here. Have my mud board there. I'm like, oh, shit. I remember the whole crew over, he stopped the whole crew to watch me. And they're like, whoa. He says, I have never seen it ever in my whole life. You want a job? I'm like, don't threaten me with a fucking job. He says, I said, who the fuck do you think taught me? What do you think Ogden was? All Ogden ever was first and second generational fucking Europeans down on their fucking luck. The great boom city, which I call blood. Fuck, this city was incredible. The great boom town. I said, these were artisans. This art city was so artisan. The restaurants, the food. I worked at White's Community Bakery, hire all the good-looking girls, and I was, ooh, the food was so excellent. I mean, the bakeries here were fucking blow your mind. The restaurant, I used to eat at Anna's every day. She was from Spain. Oh, my God. The food here, the bakery, the sewers, the tailors. Coleman's still in business. I talked Dylan Jones into using Coleman for his stuff. This was the great fucking European artisan city. When they tore down the Ogden Mall, people freaked out. We stacked bricks and reclaimed the bricks. All the houses up in freaking Shadow Valley are all reclaimed with brick. They quit doing that. They just throw it in the fucking dump. No respect for architecture. No respect for fucking culture. No respect for fucking history. No respect for that. I mean, I own Blanch and this Western stock was out there putting fucking paint over fucking wafer board, and Ogden city inspectors are letting them get away with it. And you wonder what happened on 25th. The same fucking clowns are running Ogden city inspectors. How can you let a building get built all the way up like that, and the inspectors let it get away? Then they tag it? If I was the developer, if I was the fucking anybody that had anything to do, I'd be suing the shit out of Ogden City. How can you let that go? We have building officials. They're paid. They don't do their fucking job. They never did. All the fake fucking buildings. There's one on Harrison. I argued when they built that great big building on Harrison, right there by the post office, up there on 40th. Actually, 44th. This side of the hospital. They're tearing that molded nightmare, and that isn't even that old. And I argued with them because I own Black. I said, you can't put this molded fake shit. It'll mold and rot them from the inside out. But they did, and Ogden City knew it. Corruption. Don't care. Disrespect for architecture. The great Leslie Hodson. Fuck, they're tearing down all this shit. That's my grandson. Say Pope, say Pope, say Pope. That's him. You know, all the work I've done to fucking save his map. What about the fucking Leslie Hodson masterpiece over there? You're gonna let the Exchange building go down the same way that the fucking Coliseum did? Fucking outrageous. You know, this Aldo's gone. I'm sending this video to Big Ben. He played football with the state. I know. We'll see. Another one's gone. Another one's gone. The end of the great Artisans city. The great flooding city. By the way, change Monroe Boulevard to Photo. Oh, we've changed them before. Ogden's named after a guy that never set foot. Peter Skin Ogden never set foot in fucking Ogden. You know, Bridger, that's 200 years. Dash one. I don't even see him do nothing for that. Because they don't give a fuck about history. They sure don't give a fuck about architecture. Leslie Hodson, the great. I do. I grew up in his buildings. West Weber Elementary, Walkwest Junior High, the old Weber High. This is going to take them a while because this thing is Fort Knox. This is going to take them a long time to tear this down. This thing is a beast. Probably bankrupt their ass. Stay tuned.